Welcome to Fear and Greed Summer Investing Series, brought to you by Vanta, specialists in compliance-led growth. I'm Sean Aylmer. The rise of GLP-1 drugs, think Ozempic and Wegovy, has been one of the biggest developments in global healthcare in the last few years. The drugs can be used for weight loss and management of conditions like type 2 diabetes. As always, this is general information only, and you should seek independent advice before making investment decisions. Steve Ween is the Managing Director, Equity Research at Jarden Australia, heading up their healthcare team. Steve, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thanks very much, Sean. Good to be here.
These weight loss drugs, GLP-1 drugs, it seems in my experience, I don't think I've ever seen in the healthcare sector a class of drugs make as much noise as these drugs have made.
Nor have I. And it is quite extraordinary, the benefits that it has been able to demonstrate, which includes treating diabetes, cardiovascular disease, treating sleep apnea, and weight loss. So quite a wonder drug that Americans seem to love, because it is that sort of silver bullet to a number of conditions that they seemingly experience.
Are there, in terms of an investor, how do you get into that market? Is it possible?
I mean, there's two major providers or manufacturers of that, which is Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, both not listed in Australia. So from an Australian perspective, it's very difficult to get access to participate in that. There's a number of compounding companies that are trying to replicate it, which will fall, short of the law, I think, ultimately, because these are patented drugs and your ability to replicate them is somewhat problematic. So I probably wouldn't be looking out for any of those. But if you wanted to access it, then you'd be most likely to gravitate towards buying some equity in Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly.
Okay, I mean, the sort of phase 2 of these drugs, someone has said, if you can see companies that are going to put out phase 2 of these drugs, but what you're saying is because of patents and things like that, that's easier said than done.
That's right. So, they're innovating all the time. There is a ton of money coming at this space. So there will be alternatives out there, and who they are and who ultimately gets accepted by the FDA as having something that's differentiated enough and doesn't breach existing patents, it will be the winners. But we have no real line of sight to that in Australia. Certainly with our focus on the companies that are listed here, it is really not a strong focus from my perspective. However, where my focus includes this particular drug is the implications it has on other stocks as a result of the benefits that you can have from being treated with a GLP-1.
Okay, so let's talk about ResMed, Sleep Apnea Group. They've come out and said that they could be affected by these GLP-1 drugs. How do you think about it as an investor?
Yeah, it's a very tricky, how long's a piece of string type scenario. But the way I have treated it within my forecast for ResMed, so just a little bit of backdrop there. The Eli Lilly have a drug called Mounjaro, which has just been released some phase 3 trial data around its ability to treat sleep apnea, had some pretty impressive results, and is on the way to getting a label for that from the FDA. So that is something that will happen shortly. In the meantime, everyone's looking at ResMed thinking, what are the implications? Is this a potential cure for sleep apnea? And you'll no longer need your CPAP machine or your masks that you're using to currently treat it. So my view is I have a look at what the risk to the total market size is. I look at what my expectations is around insurance coverage, because it's a very, very costly drug. I look at examples of what the real world evidence is like, is how long people last on these drugs. And that's the biggest kind of, people are currently thinking that it's a cure for everything, but people don't like these drugs when they're on it. That makes them feel nauseous. There are a number of side effects. There's literally something that came out overnight, which is linking it to an eye disorder, which is causing sight loss. So there are some real side effects to this. And what is the mix then is to how long people last on it, keep that weight off, which ultimately reduces their level or the severity of their sleep apnea.
I'm probably asking you an impossible question then, Steve. So with all that, the thing about the GLP-1 drugs is that we actually don't know the long-term effects of them simply because they haven't been around long enough. You can't ignore them when you're investing in ResMed or other companies who have treatments for all sorts of things. Do you just sort of say there's a 20% chance that this is going to dent it? I'm just trying to get my head around how you think about it in your portfolio and the effect it has.
Well, there's two sides to this. So the way I've adopted it is I've hit my valuation by 16%. So that's currently my numbers, and I've still got a buy on it or an overweight recommendation on it. And that is an impact that I have coming into the forecast for this company for the next 5 years. So by the time we get to 2030, I'm in my numbers indicating that that's going to be the maximum damage that a GLP-1 drug could have on the take-up of CPAP therapy. Now, the flip side of that is, and this is what's really interesting at the moment, is with all of this talk around GLP-1s, the awareness of sleep apnea has gone through the roof. Now, what you're finding is physicians are actively testing for sleep apnea when previously they had never done so before. So what I'm seeing at the moment in the quarterly numbers by ResMed, we are seeing extraordinary growth rates of take-up of people being diagnosed with sleep apnea and the devices as a result. So remember, when you take a GLP-1 drug, it takes more than 12 months for you to lose the weight that would have any impact on your sleep apnea. So do you want to have 12 months of no sleep or interrupted sleep, or do you want to sort of address that issue straight away? So that's what's driving it. And then what's happening now is that Samsung and Apple are now putting onto their watches or their wearable devices prompts. They've got sensors on the back of the watches that can actually detect whether or not you've had events during the night, and it will prompt you in the morning, hey, you should have a look at your sleep apnea because your blood oxygenation levels were down during the night, and that's a prime sign that you might have sleep apnea. So you go to the doctor tells you to have a test, then you get put on a CPAP. Maybe you're taking a GLP-1 at the same time, and in 18 months' time, you might stop your therapy. But meanwhile, you've bought the device, you bought the masks. ResMed's happy. Investors would be happy.
Fantastic. Steve, thank you for your time.
No problems at all.
That was Steve Ween, Managing Director, Equity Research at Jarden. Remember to get your own independent advice before making decisions. This is Fear and Greed Summer Investing Series, brought to you by Vanta. Vanta automates compliance for frameworks like ISO 27001, SOC 2, CPS 234 and Essential 8, saving time and money while building trust. Join over 8,000 companies like Atlassian, Dovetail, FireAnt and Tactic.io, managing real-time risk. Get $1,000 off at vanta.com/fearandgreed. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.